People say the truth sets you free, but nobody warns you what it costs when the truth shows up 73 years late. Walter Hayes learned that on a Tuesday that smelled like antiseptic and weak coffee, the kind of morning when fluorescent lights made everyone look a little more worn than they felt. He sat upright in a hospital bed with his reading glasses sliding down his nose, pretending he was not listening to the steady beep that kept insisting time was still moving. A nurse had just left when a young man in a gray suit stepped in, holding a thin envelope like it weighed more than paper. "Mr. Hayes?" the man asked, careful with the name. Walter nodded. The man did not offer a handshake or small talk. He set the envelope on the rolling tray and said, "This was delivered to admissions. It is addressed to you, but the sender requested you open it alone." Then he left, closing the door with a softness that felt rehearsed. Walter stared at the envelope. No return address. No stamp. Just his name printed in neat, familiar handwriting, Walter Hayes. He knew that handwriting the way you knew the sound of your own front door. Evelyn. His wife had been gone for 8 months, and yet her letters were still finding him, like she had planned it that way. His fingers trembled as he slid a thumb under the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small brass key taped to the top. The paper held one sentence in Evelyn's clean, steady script. "Walter Hayes does not exist." The words hit him in the chest, heavy and cold, like a stone dropped into still water. He read it again, slower, as if speed had been the mistake. "Walter Hayes does not exist." A laugh tried to rise, the reflex of a man who had spent a lifetime solving problems by calling them misunderstandings. But his throat tightened, and the laugh turned into a dry breath. He looked at the key. It was not a house key. It had no familiar grooves like the ones on his ring. This was older, stamped with tiny numbers. A safe deposit key. He flipped the paper over. On the back, Evelyn had written a location, a time, and 3 words that made his palms sweat. "Do not call Tom." Tom was there. Son, 46 years old, with Walter's stubborn jaw and Evelyn's calm eyes. If Evelyn was warning him off, it was not for drama. Evelyn hated drama. She liked clean counters, paid bills, and quiet solutions. Walter swung his legs to the side of the bed and set his feet on the floor, feeling the chill seep up through his socks. For a moment he tried to force a simple explanation, a forgotten account, a surprise meant to help Tom, a last-minute puzzle Evelyn thought would amuse him. But that sentence was not about money. It was about identity, about the one thing Walter had never questioned because it had always been there, like air. He reached for the phone anyway, thumb hovering over Tom's name, then stopped. "Do not call Tom." His gaze drifted to the window. Outside, rain traced thin lines down the glass, turning the parking lot into a blur of headlights and umbrellas. Walter folded the paper carefully, the way Evelyn folded napkins at Thanksgiving, and pressed the key into his palm until it left a mark. Somewhere, in a bank vault with no sunlight and no mercy, something was waiting for him, something Evelyn had kept locked away for decades. And for the first time in 73 years, Walter Hayes was not sure what name he was supposed to answer to. Walter did not call Tom. He repeated that to himself the way he used to repeat a checklist before a job site inspection. Do not call Tom. Do not involve Tom. Do not drag your child into something you do not understand. He slid the phone face down on the tray and stared at the key again until the brass seemed to warm in his palm. The numbers stamped into it were small but sharp, and they carried a kind of authority, like a badge. He looked at the back of Evelyn's note once more, reading the bank name and branch address she had written in the same steady hand she used for grocery lists and birthday cards. It was a local place, 15 minutes from the house they had shared for 41 years, close enough that Walter had driven past it 100 times without noticing anything special. That detail was what made his stomach tighten. Evelyn did not send people on wild goose chases. If she had chosen that bank, she had chosen it because it was easy to reach, because she knew he would go, and because she did not want him to make excuses. When the nurse returned, Walter asked for discharge paperwork with a calm he did not feel. He made a joke about being tired of hospital food, signed what he needed to sign, and insisted he was steady enough to leave. The nurse frowned, reminded him to take his medication, and told him to call family if he felt dizzy. Walter nodded, smiled, and tucked the brass key and Evelyn's note into the inside pocket of his jacket, as if he were hiding a fragile piece of glass. In the rideshare on the way home, The city looked ordinary in that rain-washed way, the streets glossy, the traffic patient, the radio mumbling soft talk about weather moving in from the west. Walter watched the wipers sweep back and forth and tried to assemble his life into something logical. 73 years. A childhood in Ohio. A scholarship. A career built on being reliable. A marriage built on trust. A son raised with rules and routines. Everything in neat lines. Everything that could be proven with documents. He had a birth certificate in a metal file box in the basement, a social security card, a driver license, a passport he had used twice. He had a marriage certificate framed in the hallway and an old family Bible with names written in cursive along the inside cover. Those were not feelings. Those were facts. And yet Evelyn's sentence did not sound like a metaphor. Walter Hayes does not exist. Who wrote that to the person they loved unless they meant it literally? When he got home, the house felt too quiet, the way it always did now, but today the silence sounded like it was waiting. Walter did not turn on the television. He did not pour coffee. He went straight to the hall closet, knelt, and pulled out the metal file box he had not opened since Evelyn's funeral. His hands moved automatically, unclipping folders, sliding papers out with the care of a man who had always believed order could protect him. He found the birth certificate. He found school records. He found the marriage license. He found everything that said Walter Hayes existed, all stamped and sealed and signed. The ink looked confident. It always had. Walter held the birth certificate close and noticed, for the first time, something that should have bothered him years ago. The paper was newer than it had any right to be. The edges were too crisp. The texture was too clean, like a reprint made to look old. He tried to remember who had ordered it. He could not. That frightened him more than the note. Memory was supposed to be his. It was the one place nobody else could rewrite. He caught himself thinking about how often Richard Hayes had insisted on handling official phone calls, how often Lillian had changed the subject when baby photos came up, how often Evelyn paused before answering questions that should have been simple. He had always labeled those pauses as kindness. Now he wondered if they were caution. In the living room, Evelyn's framed photo sat on the bookshelf, her smile gentle and knowing, as if she had already forgiven him for not understanding sooner. Walter whispered her name without meaning to. Then he checked the time. The bank would be open for 2 more hours. He could go now and be back before dark. He could open a safe deposit box and settle this into something sensible. Or he could stay home and let the sentence rot in his pocket until it turned into fear. Walter chose movement because movement had always been his answer. He drove himself this time, keeping both hands on the wheel, watching the speedometer like a man trying to prove he was still in control. The rain eased into a drizzle, and the clouds thinned just enough to brighten the afternoon. When he pulled into the bank parking lot, he sat for a moment, breathing through his nose, listening to the engine tick. He told himself he was walking in to retrieve a box, nothing more. He walked inside, wiped his shoes on the mat, and approached the counter. The lobby smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and printer ink. A young teller looked up with a practiced smile. Walter slid the key across the counter and said, as evenly as he could, "I need to access my safe deposit box." The teller's eyes dropped to the key, then to the computer screen, then back to Walter's face. The smile did not disappear, but it stopped being real. She typed, paused, and typed again, slower. Then she stood up halfway from her chair as if she needed a better angle to look at him. "Sir," she said, voice suddenly careful, "can I see your identification?" Walter handed over his driver license. She compared the name to the screen, then swallowed. "1 moment, please." She picked up a phone and spoke quietly, turning her body slightly away. Walter caught only a few words, but they were enough to make his mouth go dry. "It is him. The name does not match. The box is under a different file." Walter kept his hands on the counter, palms flat, as if the polished wood could hold him steady. A manager arrived, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair pulled tight, and a name tag that read Denise Parker. Denise did not smile the way people smiled when they were selling something. She looked at Walter like she was trying to confirm a memory that refused to sit still. "Mr. Hayes," Denise said, and even the way she spoke his name sounded like she was testing it. "Thank you for waiting. Let us step into my office for a moment." Walter wanted to say no, wanted to demand they stop acting as if he were a mistake, but his voice felt stuck behind his teeth. He nodded and followed her past the desks, past posters about fraud prevention and retirement planning, past a small Christmas tree that was still up even though it was already mid-January. Denise closed her office door and gestured for him to sit. Walter remained standing. "You said the name does not match," he said. "This key is mine. My wife left it to me." Denise's eyes flicked to the key, then to the driver license. "I understand," she said carefully. "But the safe deposit box linked to that key is not filed under Walter Hayes. It is filed under a different name, and the access permissions are specific." Walter felt heat climb his neck. "Then file it correctly," he snapped. "It has been my name for 73 years. Denise did not flinch. "Sir, I do not doubt you have used that name," she said, voice calm. "But banking records require the legal name on file. The name connected to that box is Ethan Cole." The room seemed to tilt, not dramatically, but just enough to make Walter grip the back of the chair. Ethan Cole. The name meant nothing and everything at once. It sounded like a stranger and like a password. Denise slid a thin folder toward him. "This is what our system shows," she said. "The box was opened one time, 42 years ago. The signature on that access log matches the name Ethan Cole, and the identification number on file is not the one linked to Walter Hayes." Walter stared at the folder. He expected anger, but what he felt was a cold, sinking certainty, like stepping onto ice and realizing it was already cracked. "I do not know who that is," he said, and his voice sounded smaller than he wanted. Denise watched him for a long second, then sighed as if she had been hoping he would say something else. "Mr. Hayes," she said, softer. "I have worked at this branch for 27 years. I remember when this box was opened that one time. I was new, still learning vault procedure. The man who opened it looked like you, but younger. He was with a woman. She did not give her name to me. She let him do the talking. I remember because she kept her hands folded, like she was afraid of touching anything." Walter's mouth went dry. "My wife," he whispered. Denise nodded once. "That is what I assumed then," she said. "But the paperwork on file lists a secondary contact, and it is not Evelyn Hayes." She tapped a line. Walter leaned forward and read the name, Margaret Reed. Under it was an old phone number, an address he did not recognize, and a note in the margin. "In case of emergency, contact Maggie." Walter sat back as if the paper had pushed him. Maggie. Evelyn had never mentioned a Maggie. "So what now?" Walter asked, forcing his voice into something firm. "I have the key. I am here. My identification is valid. My wife left me the key. Are you telling me I cannot open it?" Denise folded her hands on the desk. "I am telling you that I cannot grant access under Walter Hayes," she said. "If you can provide documentation that you are legally Ethan Cole, or if you can produce a court order, we can proceed. Without that, the box remains sealed." Walter let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Documentation. He had spent his life believing documents were the bedrock of reality. Now a bank manager was telling him reality depended on a name he had never used. "Can you at least tell me what is inside?" he asked. Denise shook her head. "I cannot," she said. "The contents are private." Walter's hands curled into fists on his knees. "Then tell me this," he said, leaning forward. "Why does your system flag me like I am a problem?" Denise hesitated, then pushed her monitor slightly, so he could see. A red banner sat under the notes. "Verify identity. Do not discuss by phone. In person only." Denise lowered her voice. "Because the name Ethan Cole was marked as sensitive," she said. "And because there is an instruction note tied to this file. It says, if Walter comes in, do not let him call his son. Give him the folder. And wait." Walter felt the air leave his lungs in a slow, unbelieving exhale. Someone had predicted this moment down to the detail that he should not call Tom. Walter stared at Denise, waiting for her to blink and admit it was a misunderstanding, a clerical error, anything. Denise did not blink. She looked tired, like she had been carrying someone else's secret longer than she wanted. "Who added that note?" Walter asked. Denise shook her head. "It was entered by a compliance officer, not someone at this branch," she said. "The name is not visible to me." Walter's fingers tightened around the brass key until it hurt. "So my wife planned this," he said. "She told someone what to do and told them to keep me from calling my son." Denise chose her words carefully. "I am telling you the note exists," she said, "and it matches the message you brought in." Walter's mind sprinted ahead, dragging memories behind it like luggage. Evelyn had been organized. When she was diagnosed, she made lists. She labeled bottles. She wrote instructions for the sprinkler timer and the internet router. But she never said Ethan Cole. Not once. Walter stood too quickly, and the room swayed. Denise rose halfway as if she might catch him, then thought better of it. Walter steadied himself and forced his focus back to the folder. Margaret Reed. Maggie. A secondary contact. Walter pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Tom's name, then remembered the instruction. Do not call Tom. It felt less like a request and more like a boundary set by someone who understood consequences Walter could not see. Can I copy that information? He asked Denise, pointing to the phone number and address. Denise nodded. That is allowed, she said. Walter took a photo, hands shaking enough to blur the first attempt. He tried again until the numbers were sharp. He slid the folder back. If I prove I am Ethan Cole, I can open the box, he said. Denise nodded. Yes, she answered. Or if the primary owner authorizes access. Walter almost laughed. Primary owner, he repeated. You mean I am not even the owner of my own secret? Denise's expression softened. Someone wanted you guided, she said, not blocked. Like they were trying to keep you from making a mistake. Walter left the office and walked through the lobby with his eyes down. Outside, the drizzle had stopped, and the parking lot shone under pale winter light. Walter sat in his car without starting it. His phone buzzed once. A text from Tom. Hey Dad, just checking in. How are you feeling today? Walter stared until his eyes burned. He typed, deleted, typed again, then set the phone down without replying. He entered Maggie's address into his map. 19 miles. About 28 minutes with light traffic. Walter told himself he would drive there, knock, ask a simple question, and leave with a simple answer. That was the lie he needed to keep his hands steady on the wheel. On the drive, his mind replayed Evelyn's last months. Her quiet watching him from across the kitchen, her pauses before harmless answers, the way she squeezed his hand a fraction too hard when Tom visited, like she was asking forgiveness without words. Walter turned into a narrow residential street lined with bare trees and modest houses. The address led to a small duplex with peeling white paint and a mailbox that sagged on its post. Walter parked and sat long enough to count his breaths. Then he got out, walked up the short path, and raised his hand to knock. Before his knuckles touched the door, it opened. A woman stood there, late 70s or early 80s, gray hair cut short, eyes sharp and unsettled like she had not slept. She looked at Walter and said his name with bitter certainty. Ethan, she whispered. It took you long enough. Walter froze with his hand still raised, the way you froze when someone said a word that should not belong to you. The woman's voice was not dramatic, not angry, just tired, as if she had been holding that name for decades and was surprised it still fit. My name is Walter, he said, forcing the sentence out like a badge. Walter Hayes. The woman opened the door wider by an inch. That is what they taught you to say, she replied. Her eyes traveled over his face with a strange mix of recognition and grief, like she was looking at two people layered on top of each other. Are you Margaret Reed? Walter asked. The woman's mouth tightened at the formal name. Nobody has called me that in a long time, she said. Around here, I am Maggie. Then she looked past him, down the street, as if checking whether he brought company. You came alone, she noted. Walter nodded. I did, he said. And I am not calling my son. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Maggie's gaze snapped back. So Evelyn gave you the warning, she said quietly. Walter felt heat behind his eyes. You knew my wife, he said. Your name is on a bank file, and she left me a key. Tell me what this is. Maggie stepped back and motioned him inside. The duplex smelled like old books and lemon cleaner. The living room was tidy but sparse, like someone had practiced living without attachments. A small lamp glowed beside an armchair. On the wall hung a framed photograph of a little boy standing in front of a Christmas tree, cheeks round, smile uncertain. Walter's breath caught because the boy's eyes looked like his, but the face was not the face Walter remembered from childhood photos. Maggie saw him staring. That is you, she said, before the story changed. No, Walter said too quickly. That is not me. I have pictures. School records. You have paper, Maggie interrupted, sharp enough to stop him. She sat in the armchair and pointed to a wooden chair. Walter sat, back straight as if posture could keep identity intact. Evelyn loved you, Maggie said, voice softer now. She did not do this to punish you. Then why? Walter asked. Maggie exhaled. Because you were running out of time, she said. And she could not carry it anymore. Not alone. Carry what? Walter asked. Maggie leaned forward. Your name, she said. Your beginning. The part of you that was erased, so clean you never noticed the missing pieces. Walter shook his head. I was born in Dayton, he insisted. I had a father named Richard Hayes, a mother named Lillian. Roosevelt High School. I can tell you the route home. I can tell you the smell of the gym on pep rally days. Maggie's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. I am not saying you did not live those memories, she said. I am saying they were built on top of something else. Like new paint on old wood. Why would anyone do that? Walter asked. Maggie's jaw tightened. Because there were people with money and influence who needed a clean ending, she said. And because you were small enough to move. Walter forced himself to breathe. Was I kidnapped? He asked. Maggie's eyes flashed. Do not turn this into a spectacle, she warned. No one snatched you off a sidewalk. It was quieter than that. Paperwork. Promises. A house you did not want to lose. A man who could make problems disappear. Walter's mind jumped to Richard Hayes, the father he had buried with an honorable eulogy. My father was a good man, Walter said automatically. Maggie did not move. Your father was the man who raised you, she said carefully. That does not answer what he did before you could speak. Walter's stomach rolled. Why are you telling me now? He asked. Maggie looked down at her hands. Because Evelyn asked me to wait, she said. She said if the truth arrived too early, it would destroy your marriage and your son's childhood. She said you would spend your best years chasing ghosts instead of building a life. And she was right about you, Walter. You fix things. Walter let out a bitter breath. So my wife decided when I could know who I am. Your wife decided when you could survive it, Maggie corrected. Walter's phone buzzed in his pocket. Maggie's eyes sharpened. If that is Tom, do not answer, she said. Walter's fingers curled around the phone through fabric. Why? He asked. Maggie met his eyes and fear flickered there. Because if Tom knows you are here, she said, the people who still care about this story will know too. And those people do not like loose ends. Maggie's warning landed. Like weight on Walter's ribs. Loose ends. People who still cared. Walter had spent his life believing every problem had an owner, every mistake had a fix, and every truth, once found, could be filed into the correct drawer. Maggie was telling him this truth had never been meant to live in a drawer at all. Who are these people? Walter asked, voice low. Maggie stood, crossed to a narrow bookshelf, and pulled out a thin binder that looked too new to belong in a room like this. She held it against her chest for a moment, eyes closed, like she was deciding whether she still had the right to open it. I am going to tell you the version Evelyn wanted you to hear first, she said. The version that keeps you upright. Walter gave a strained nod. Maggie opened the binder and slid out a plastic sleeve holding copies of old documents, a hospital intake form, a county record, and a newspaper clipping. The clipping described a fire at a small community building in 1959, the kind of local tragedy people talked about for a year and then pushed into the past. No graphic details, only names, dates, and a list of families affected. Walter's eyes scanned until one stopped him cold. Cole. Ethan Cole, Walter whispered. Maggie nodded. That was you, she said. And that was your mother's last name. Walter stared. My mother was Lillian Hayes. Maggie's gaze did not soften. The woman who raised you was Lillian Hayes, she said. Your birth mother was Helen Cole. She did not have money. She did not have influence. She had a baby and a life that could be pushed around. Walter clenched his hands into fists. Where is she? He asked. Maggie hesitated. She is gone, Maggie said quietly. She passed away years ago. She wanted you safe. She wanted you to have a life that did not feel like a fight every day. Safe. That word had always been Walter's default. Safe house, safe job, safe plan. He had built a safe life like a fortress and called it love. Then why change my name? He asked. Why erase Ethan Cole? Maggie slid another sleeve toward him. Because of Richard Hayes, she said, and Walter's whole body reacted. Maggie lifted her chin. Listen, she said. You can honor the man who taught you how to ride a bike and still accept he did things you never knew. People are not as clean as the stories we tell at funerals. Walter swallowed hard. The adoption paperwork dates did not line up. It suggested urgency. This does not look normal, Walter said. It was not, Maggie replied. It was a rescue dressed up as routine. Rescue from what? Walter asked. Maggie leaned forward. From attention, she said. From questions. From a town that started whispering that something about that fire did not add up. Donations vanished. Inspections were skipped. Permits were signed too quickly. The kind of paperwork that can make people rich or ruin them, depending on who reads it. Walter felt dizzy, not from illness, but from the way his past detached from the floor. What does any of that have to do with me? He demanded. Maggie's eyes shone with frustrated sadness. Because you were a living receipt, she said. A child connected to people who could ask the wrong questions later. The simplest way to bury questions is to move the person who could grow up and ask them. Walter pictured himself at 18 signing forms, never wondering why everything arrived so easily. You were saying my father took me to protect himself, Walter said. Maggie did not flinch. He told himself he was protecting you, she said. But he was also protecting his reputation, his connections, his future. Walter's jaw tightened. Then why did I have a good life? He asked. Why did he pay for school, show up for my games, sit at my graduation? If I was just a problem, he could have hidden me anywhere. Maggie looked at him for a long moment. Because once you were in his house, you stopped being an abstract problem, she said. You became a real child. People can be selfish and still get attached. That is what makes it hard. He gave you love and a lie in the same hands. Walter stared until the words blurred. Then Maggie delivered the cut that changed everything. Evelyn learned, she said, because she found a letter in Richard's things before you married. She did not tell you. She chose you. She chose your life. Walter felt something crack in his chest. She knew before we had Tom, he whispered. Maggie nodded. Yes, she said. And she watched you become a father, and she was terrified. She feared if you learned the truth, you would not know where to put your love. Walter reached for the edge of the table to ground himself. Then why now? He asked. Why leave the key? Why trigger the bank? Maggie's voice softened. Because someone else came looking, she said. Walter's stomach dropped. Who? Maggie swallowed. A man from a law office, she said. He asked about Ethan Cole. He asked about the bank box. Polite questions that felt like pressure. Evelyn realized the lie was no longer sleeping. She set rules to keep you from calling Tom because she feared your son would be pulled into this before you understood it. Walter's phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls. All from Tom. Maggie's eyes widened. Do not answer, she said, urgent but controlled. Walter stared at Tom's name like it was both anchor and target. If someone is looking, Walter said, voice low, then they know I exist. Maggie nodded. They know Walter Hayes exists, she said. What they do not want is Ethan Cole stepping out from behind him. Walter touched the brass key through his pocket. Then tell me what is in that box, he said. Maggie held his gaze. Proof, she said. Enough proof to rewrite your name, and enough proof to embarrass people who have spent a lifetime avoiding embarrassment. That is why it is locked. That is why Evelyn put you on rails. And that is why you need to decide right now whether you want comfort or you want the truth. Walter sat still, as if movement might knock the fragile logic of his life off the table. Comfort or truth. He had always believed those two could coexist. Now he felt like a man staring at a map only to realize the street names had been changed years ago. His phone kept lighting up with Tom's name, each vibration a tug on a rope tied to his chest. He could almost hear Evelyn in the corners of the room. Do not pull him into it until you understand it. Walter slid the phone into airplane mode, not because he did not love Tom, but because he needed 1 hour where the world did not get to reach him first. Maggie watched him do it and nodded once. If you go back to the bank, she said, do not go alone. Walter looked up. You told me to come alone, he said. Maggie's jaw tightened. I told you to come alone here, she replied. Not to walk into a vault full of other people's leverage with nobody watching your back. Walter forced his voice steady. You said there is proof, he said. Proof of what exactly? Maggie hesitated, then pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed at the edges. Evelyn gave me this 2 weeks before she passed, Maggie said. She told me not to hand it over unless you showed up and asked for the truth with your own mouth. Walter held out his hand. Maggie did not give it yet. Before you take it, she said, understand this. You have lived as Walter Hayes for so long that Ethan Cole will feel like a costume. You will want to rip it off and return to what is familiar. But if you do, you will never know which parts of your life were yours and which parts were arranged. Walter swallowed hard. I do not want a different life, he said. I want my life to be real. Maggie's eyes softened for a moment. She placed the envelope into his hand. Walter turned it over. Evelyn had written 3 words, "For when you break." Walter tucked it into his jacket pocket beside the brass key. "What do I do now?" Walter asked. Maggie leaned back, shoulders heavy. "You start by not letting fear make your choices," she said. "Your son is your anchor, but he can become your weakness if you reach for him at the wrong time. You need a plan that protects him and still lets you move." Plan. Walter could do plans. He stood, feeling older than he had ever felt, and walked to the door with Maggie following. On the porch, the air was cold and clean. The street looked painfully normal. "If someone is looking," Walter asked, "how do I know they are not already watching?" Maggie glanced down the quiet road. "You do not," she said. "That is why you move like a man who has nothing to hide, but everything to lose." Walter sat in his car with hands on the wheel and did not start the engine. He wanted to cry but could not. What came instead was anger, tight and focused. He turned airplane mode off and the phone exploded with missed calls. He did not call Tom. He did not answer, but he opened the voicemail. Tom's voice filled the car, warm and worried. "Dad, it is me," Tom said. "I am heading over. You are not answering, and I do not like it. Please pick up. If you are okay, just text me one word. Anything." Walter closed his eyes. The instinct to respond was almost painful. One word. Anything. He could type okay and pretend the world was still in order. Instead, he drove home, because home was where Evelyn's presence still lived in drawers and closets and small routines. He went straight to the bedroom closet, pulled out the keepsake bin, and found a slim digital voice recorder he had never seen. A piece of tape read, "Play after Maggie." Walter sat on the edge of the bed, thumb hovering, then pressed play. Evelyn's voice came through steady and close. "Walter, if you are hearing this, then someone has already started asking about Ethan, and they will not stop at you." Walter held the recorder as if it might slip out of time. Evelyn's tone was calm but urgent, like she had rehearsed this 100 times in her head so fear would not steal clarity. "I need you to do 3 things," she said. "First, breathe. Second, do not call Tom. Third, listen all the way to the end before you move." Walter stared at the closet door like it could keep the past from spilling into the room. "I know you are angry," Evelyn said. "I know you feel fooled. I am sorry. I chose silence because I believed I was protecting the life we built, and because I believed you would rather be a good father than a man chasing a broken origin story. I might have been wrong, but I was not careless." Evelyn described a caller from Columbus, polite but pressuring, asking about Ethan Cole, about the fire, about Richard, about the bank box. "He said something I cannot forget," Evelyn told him. "Mrs. Hayes, loose ends become headlines." That is when I understood the lie was no longer sleeping. Walter's fingers tightened around the recorder. Evelyn continued. She did not put the box in the bank to hurt him. She put it there because it was the only place she knew he would take seriously. She needed him to find Maggie before he found anyone else. "Maggie will tell you what happened," Evelyn said, "but she will not tell you what it will cost. That is my job." The cost was not physical danger. The cost was certainty. The cost was the simple story Walter used to hold himself together. And if Walter did not hold himself together, Tom would feel it before Walter could explain it. Walter's phone lit up with another missed call from Tom and a text. "Dad, I am 5 minutes away." Evelyn's voice turned firm. "If Tom shows up, you must not tell him everything at once," she said. "He will hear lie and think it means you lied to him. He will hear Ethan and think it means he does not know his own father. That will break him in a way you cannot fix with logic." Then Evelyn gave steps. In her nightstand drawer, under a blue scarf, there was an envelope labeled Grant. Inside was the number for Dr. Michael Grant, someone Richard trusted, someone who still had a conscience. Walter must call from a number that was not Tom's and say only, "Evelyn is gone. Maggie found me. I need the file." Then Walter must return to the bank in daylight, ask for Denise Parker, and request identity verification for Ethan Cole. He must say the name out loud. If he could not say it, he was not ready to open the box. "If someone tries to rush you, stall," Evelyn said. "If someone tries to charm you, stall. If someone tries to scare you, stall. The person who benefits from your panic is never you." Evelyn's voice dropped lower, intimate and steady. She loved him as Walter and as Ethan, even before she understood how both names could belong to one man. Walter was not broken because his beginning was rewritten. He was not guilty because someone used him. but he would become guilty if fear made him cruel to their son. "I need you to promise me that," Evelyn said. Walter whispered, "I promise." The recording clicked, and Evelyn added one last warning, quieter but sharper than the rest. "If a man named Daniel Mercer contacts you, do not meet him alone. He started this. He will try to make you trade your truth for your peace." At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Walter's phone still glowed with the last message from Tom, 5 minutes away, while Evelyn's final instruction echoed in his head like a guardrail. "Breathe. Do not panic. Do not let the truth fall on your son like a wall." The doorbell rang again, sharp and impatient. Walter tucked the recorder back into the keepsake bin, shut the lid, and shoved it into the closet faster than he meant to, as if hiding it could keep the past from spilling into the hallway. He caught his reflection near the coat rack and barely recognized the eyes staring back. The face was the same, but the certainty behind it was gone. He checked the peephole and saw Tom on the porch, shoulders tight, keys in hand, rain jacket half on like he had thrown it over his shirt mid-worry. Relief hit Walter so hard his knees softened. It was not a stranger. It was not Daniel Mercer. It was his son. Walter opened the door and forced a smile that felt like a tool. Tom stepped in immediately, scanning Walter's face the way he used to scan weather before a long drive. "I have been calling you," Tom said. "Are you okay? You look pale." Walter swallowed, trying to place his voice somewhere steady. "I am okay," he said, then hated how quickly it came out as a lie. He corrected himself before it hardened. "I am shaken. Something happened today." Tom's brow creased. "Hospital?" he asked. "Did you fall? Did you drive yourself?" Walter nodded. "I drove," he admitted. "I should not have." Tom's frustration flared, but it was fear wearing a sharper mask. "Dad, you cannot scare me like that," he said. Walter took the hit without defending himself. "You are right," he said quietly. "I am sorry." Tom looked past him, as if expecting to see a mess, a broken lamp, any visible proof of what Walter could not name. "Where is your phone?" Tom asked. Walter patted his pocket. "Right here," he said. "I was not ignoring you. I had to think." Tom exhaled, but the worry stayed. "Then tell me what is going on," he said. Walter felt the full truth rise like a tide behind his teeth. Ethan, the bank, Maggie, the file, Mercer, but Evelyn's warning flashed red in his mind. Do not unload it all at once. Walter chose the smallest honest piece he could hold without dropping. "Your mother left me something," he said. Tom's expression softened at the mention of Evelyn, then tightened again as he sensed the weight behind the sentence. "Mom left you what?" Tom asked. "A key," Walter said, "and a note. The note said there are things about our family that I did not know." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Like what?" Walter shook his head. "I do not know yet," he said, and it was true. "But I am going to find out. And I need you to trust me when I say I am doing this to protect you, not to hide from you." Tom stared at him, caught between suspicion and love. "Protect me from what?" he asked. Walter could not say the names yet. He rested a hand on Tom's shoulder, grounding himself in something real. "From confusion," he said. "From being pulled into something before I understand it." Tom's voice dropped. "You are scaring me more by being vague," he said. Walter nodded once. "I know," he said. "Give me 24 hours. One day, let me follow the steps your mother left. After that, I will sit with you and tell you everything I know, clearly." Tom held the silence, then nodded. 24 hours, he said. "But you do not do anything alone." Walter's chest tightened. It matched Evelyn's warning perfectly. "Deal," Walter said. Tom lifted his phone. "Call me right now," he insisted. Walter did, and Tom's phone rang like proof the connection still worked. As the call connected, Walter's own phone buzzed. A new email subject line lit the screen and turned his blood cold. "Meeting request, Daniel Mercer."